So I touched on something with the Band-Aid there about medical device classification. And really the main driver of why medical devices are classified at different levels has to do with risks. And there's really two major kinds of risks that need to be considered. One is just the clinical situation that they are intending to treat, the severity of that clinical situation. So heart failure, anything really involving the heart, especially if you're putting something mechanical in there, is probably a class 3. Use is also an important factor to consider. If the actual intervention itself presents high risks to the patient, to the physicians, requires a higher level of training and scrutiny, those will also drive things up into the class 3 level. And there are 3 classes that we work within. Class 1 would be the lowest risk, class 2 is middle, and class 3 is high. Typically, if you're in a class 3, you're going to see a more stringent regulatory approval process. You're probably going to need to have clinical work to support entry into the market, but not always. You may be able to make an argument using the 510(k) process, which, if you can show equivalence to an existing device, might mean that you don't necessarily need a clinical trial to be able to get on the market. But it's also possible that a class 2 product may not necessarily present the same level of risks, but you may not necessarily be able to show that you can achieve what you're trying to do without doing a clinical trial. So there are definitely cases where the FDA might ask for a class 2 510(k) plus clinical path to get to market. Really depends on some of the other elements that we'll work through later on, but a lot of it is triggered by their perception of understanding of clinical and use risks. History plays a big role in that as well. The FDA will sometimes down-classify a device once there's enough experience. Cardiac balloon catheters, for instance, were down-classified about, I think 7, 8 years ago now. And that was based on the fact that they were just looking back on about 20+ years of experience on those devices, the kinds of complaints that were being received, as well as the number of standards that had been developed that now manufacturers adapt to and recognize that they don't necessarily need to see the same level of data every time a new product comes in that classification. There's enough information that you could potentially point to, compare, test your product against that helps them understand what the risk is that it would present. So there's more on this in the link that Cheryl had provided on the FDA's website, and I definitely would encourage you to check that out if you want to get some more information on that. But for today, that's basically the space that we're considering when it comes to medical devices and how it affects the kind of work you need to do or plan to do as you develop towards commercialization.